On the night of November 3rd, 1984, the legendary Madison Square Garden once again became the epicenter of the bodybuilding world. 10 years after New York last hosted the event, Mr. Olympia returned to the city where it all began. Inside the Felt Forum, under blazing lights and an electric atmosphere, fans gathered to witness history, a meeting between the glorious past and the promising future of professional bodybuilding. Everyone in the crowd knew they were about to see something special, something that would define an era. The vibe of the time perfectly matched the moment. It was 1984, the year of Purple Rain, The Terminator, and peak 80s pop culture. Everything was big, bold, and full of style, just like the spectacle about to unfold. The 1984 Mr. Olympia wasn't just another contest. It was a living snapshot of a decade obsessed with power, glamour, and reinvention. New York was buzzing with modern energy, and the audience packed the venue to see their heroes of flesh and iron battle it out under the spotlight. The event carried deep symbolic weight. It was more than a comeback to a city. It was a return to the roots. The first 6 Olympias had taken place in New York, and now, 2 decades later, the competition was coming home, bigger, more polished, and staged with the grandeur of a world-class production. The International Federation of Bodybuilding, IFBB, knew this night would mark a turning point, a moment that redefined what the sport could be. The numbers proved it. Around 4,200 people attended the prejudging, and another 5,000 filled every seat for the finals, a record at the time. Cameras flashed nonstop as the stage turned into a full-on multimedia show. Bodybuilding had officially entered the age of mass media, attracting fans not just from gyms, but also from movie theaters and living rooms across America. The prize money reflected this new era too, $100,000 in total, with a whopping $50,000 for the champion, the highest purse in Mr. Olympia's history. It was a powerful sign of how far the sport had come, proving that bodybuilding had evolved from an underground scene into a respected professional career. That check wasn't just a financial reward. It was a symbol of legitimacy, a recognition that muscle had finally gone mainstream. Under the glowing lights of Madison Square Garden, with the audience roaring and the world watching, one of the most iconic chapters in bodybuilding history began. The 1984 Olympia wouldn't be just another edition. It would be a turning point, the night when the past and the future faced each other, ready to decide who would shape the destiny of muscle and glory. And then came the first big surprise of the evening. When the announcer called out the name Sergio "The Myth" Oliva, the Felt Forum erupted. It was the moment everyone had been waiting for. After 12 years away, the man who had won 3 straight titles, in 1967, 1968, and 1969, stepped back onto the stage that had made him a legend. At 43 years old, Sergio wasn't just another competitor. He was a living symbol of the golden era, a bridge between the Olympia's birth and its new age. Every step he took towards center stage felt like the return of a king to his throne. For over a decade, Oliva had been away from IFBB competition, building an almost mythical reputation. Working as a police officer in Chicago, his image still graced magazine covers and gym walls, inspiring generations of athletes who had grown up idolizing him. Seeing the myth under the Olympia lights again was like watching a hero walk straight out of history, a gladiator returning to the arena. But time, relentless as always, had left its marks. As Oliva began his posing routine, it was clear that the once untouchable physique no longer carried the same density and razor-sharp definition of the late 60s. His legs, once legendary for their power, now showed signs of wear. Still, one thing time could never take away was his charisma, that magnetic presence that made the crowd react to every move like part of a perfectly timed dance. Then came the moment nobody would ever forget. Sergio lifted his arms high above his head and struck his trademark arms overhead victory pose, the one that had forever etched his name into history. For a few seconds, time seemed to freeze. Cameras flashed, the crowd roared, and it felt as if the past itself had come back to life. That pose wasn't just a display of muscle. It was a tribute to the very soul of bodybuilding. The judges were fair, and Sergio's 8th place finish reflected the reality of a sport that had evolved. But for the fans, rankings didn't matter. What truly counted was the privilege of seeing him there again, standing shoulder to shoulder with a new generation that worshipped him. His very presence elevated the entire event, reminding everyone where the Olympia had come from and why it existed in the first place. When the lights dimmed and Sergio walked off stage, the crowd stayed on their feet, applauding endlessly. It was a quiet farewell, but one filled with emotion. In that moment, Olympia didn't lose a competitor, it gained an eternal legend. The myth was leaving the stage, but his shadow would remain, inspiring every athlete who dared to dream of glory. When the lights came back on for the next competitors, the audience instantly knew they were witnessing a new generation that would redefine bodybuilding. Leading the pack was 24-year-old Lee Haney, weighing in at a massive 243 pounds, around 110 kilos. Just a year earlier, he'd been seen as a rising star. Now he appeared completely transformed. His body struck the perfect balance between mass and aesthetics, strength and grace. Fans began calling it mass with class. Every pose Haney hit looked intentional, his broad shoulders tapering into a razor-sharp waist that screamed one thing: a new era had begun. Behind him stood Muhammad Makawai, fighting to keep the old-school flame alive. At just 5 feet 2 inches, 1.57 meters, and 160 pounds, 72 kilos, he defied the logic of the sport. His routine was pure artistry, a choreographed dance that made the audience forget his size and focus instead on his flawless symmetry. Runner-up in 1983, Makawai once again shined through his precision and showmanship. Still, Haney's dominance was undeniable. The Egyptian took second place, earning deep respect and thunderous applause for his stage brilliance. Third place went to Germany's Juice-Up Wilkosch, standing 6 feet tall, 1.83 meters, and weighing around 230 pounds, 104 kilos. It was the best version of his physique anyone had ever seen: dense, balanced, and masterfully conditioned. Wilkosch hit every pose like a classic statue come to life, radiating quiet confidence and heroic presence. For many, that bronze medal was long overdue recognition for years of quiet dedication. His thick chest and sculpted abs stood as proof that old-school bodybuilding still had lessons to teach. Among the veterans, 46-year-old Albert Beckles stole the show. He proved that time wasn't an enemy, it was fuel. His razor-sharp biceps and thick back earned him 4th place, beating athletes half his age. Beckles showed that experience could absolutely rival youth. Beside him was another veteran making a comeback, Roy Callender. Though leaner than in his prime, he secured 5th place with poise and respect. Not everyone managed to relive past glories. Samir Banout, the reigning 1983 champion, struggled with water retention and slipped to 6th place, far from the legendary form that had earned him the Sando. Meanwhile, newcomer Bob Paris was making his professional debut. Young, handsome, and gifted with flawless proportions, he looked like the blueprint for the future of bodybuilding, though still lacking the sheer density of the top-tier pros. His 7th place was seen not as a loss, but as a promise of greatness to come. And, of course, the return of Tom Platz didn't go unnoticed, the man with the most famous legs in bodybuilding history. After a serious biceps injury, he was attempting a comeback. Though his physique wasn't quite the same as before, his charisma and stage energy won over the crowd, earning him 9th place. Chris Dickerson, the 1982 champion, quietly closed his Olympia career outside the top 10, a low-profile exit, yet one filled with dignity. Together, these athletes turned the 1984 stage into a living gallery of different eras, where every physique told a story and every pose wrote a new chapter in bodybuilding's evolution. Mr. Olympia 1984 was more than a competition, it was a clash of generations. Greg Merritt and Rick Wayne, 2 of bodybuilding's most respected writers, described it as a symbolic battle between eras. On one side stood the legends who had paved the way, like Sergio Oliva and Chris Dickerson. On the other, the new standard of symmetry and proportion embodied by Lee Haney. It was as if the Madison Square Garden stage had become a time machine, showing the sport's past and future side by side in one unforgettable night. When Lee Haney stepped into the spotlight, the crowd immediately sensed something different. His physique wasn't just massive, it was harmonious, fluid, and complete. There was something almost architectural about his build. His broad shoulders created a powerful base, while his narrow waist and perfectly etched abs formed a silhouette that redefined the male ideal. Every pose was deliberate, calm, and controlled, like he knew he was ushering in a new age. All eyes were on him, just as they had once been on Sergio Oliva decades earlier. But now, the myth stood face to face with his successor. The contrast was clear. Oliva represented the raw, magnetic power of the 60s. Haney embodied the science, precision, and refined aesthetics of the 80s. There was no rivalry between them, only respect, admiration, and the unmistakable feeling that a torch had been passed. The crowd reacted with pure emotion to that historic contrast. While Sergio embodied the memory of a time when muscle was an act of rebellion, Haney showed that bodybuilding had matured, becoming a calculated art form. It was like watching the Renaissance replace the Middle Ages, but within the human body. And that transformation was happening right there, in front of thousands of eyes. The bodybuilding magazines of the day perfectly captured it, calling the moment the future and the past. And they were right. Haney didn't just win, he symbolized evolution. The calm presence of Oliva, watching from the side of the stage, completed the picture. The old king passing the scepter to the new one. That night sealed the transition from raw, instinctive muscle to an era defined by symmetry, proportion, and precision. The 1984 Olympia became forever known as the turning point, the moment bodybuilding stopped being just a display of brute power and became a pursuit of visual perfection. And Lee Haney, with his sculpted physique and champion's composure, didn't just take home a trophy. He set a new standard that would influence generations to come. Backstage at Madison Square Garden, the atmosphere was electric with respect and anticipation. Journalist Rick Wayne described it best. New York had welcomed Sergio Oliva like a hometown hero. Every cheer was a tribute to his legacy, to the man who helped shape the sport itself. But at the same time, the city knew a new name was about to become synonymous with greatness. When Lee Haney stepped forward to receive his trophy, the crowd erupted, not just celebrating that night's winner, but embracing the face of a new era. The contrast between the two champions deeply moved the audience. Sergio, calm and dignified after years of glory, stood watching the young prodigy with admiration. And Haney, aware of the moment's weight, did something few champions would dare. He dedicated part of his victory speech to Sergio himself. He thanked him for the example, the inspiration, and the courage to open the path that he now followed. That humble, heartfelt gesture brought the crowd to its feet, sealing a beautiful moment of unity between past and future. As the fans roared in the stands, backstage buzzed with excitement. Reporters, trainers, and athletes all knew they had just witnessed history. Many were already predicting what time would soon confirm. Haney had the potential to break Arnold Schwarzenegger's record of 7 Olympia titles. His youth, discipline, and extraordinary genetics pointed to long-term dominance. Rick Wayne later wrote, "That night, Olympia found its new king, and he was just getting started." The fitness press agreed unanimously. Magazines like Flex, Muscle and Fitness, and Iron Man praised not just Haney's physique, but the new direction he represented for the sport. The balance between size, symmetry, and charisma had become the new ideal, and fans seemed ready to embrace that evolution. Critics declared the 1984 Olympia not only the best up to that point, but the most professional, inspiring, and meaningful event in IFBB history. Offstage, the athletes' behavior earned equal admiration. There were no rivalries, no controversies, just respect, camaraderie, and the shared understanding that everyone present was part of a turning point. The organization, flawless from start to finish, cemented Olympia's status as a world-class spectacle. And when the curtains finally closed, one truth hung in the air. The audience had just witnessed the rise of a new icon. Lee Haney wasn't just that year's champion. He was the beginning of a dynasty. Amid applause, camera flashes, and emotional cheers, the 1984 Olympia became the moment bodybuilding stopped looking backward and finally turned toward the future. When the announcer stepped onto the stage to reveal the results, silence filled Madison Square Garden. The crowd, still electrified from the show, waited for the decisive moment. One by one, names were called. Each announcement met with thunderous applause. Then came the words everyone had been waiting for. Lee Haney, United States. The arena erupted. The 24-year-old had just claimed the first of what would become 8 consecutive Olympia titles, launching a reign that would define the entire decade. Haney raised the trophy high, both hands trembling with emotion, as his wife Shirley watched proudly from the front row. The $50,000 prize, the largest ever awarded to an Olympia winner at that time, symbolized a new age when bodybuilding was no longer just a passion, but a true profession. Beside him, Mohamed Makawai accepted his $25,000 second-place prize with grace and humility, just as he always had. And Jusup Wilkosch, the mighty German, rounded out the podium with $10,000, and the roaring applause of a crowd that knew it had witnessed greatness. Fourth place went to Albert Beckles, who at 46 proved to be the ultimate example of athletic longevity. His $6,000 prize was more than just money. It was a tribute to decades of relentless dedication. Right behind him, Roy Callender earned $4,000, showing he still had the strength and respect of a true legend. The veteran stood tall, even as the new generation took center stage. Samir Bannout, the defending champion, placed 6th and took home $2,500, a result that showed just how competitive the Olympia had become. Just below him, Bob Paris earned $2,000, representing the future, young, aesthetic, and full of promise. As for Sergio Oliva, his symbolic $2,000 payout couldn't possibly measure the greatness of his return. The crowd rose to its feet for him, not because of placement, but because they knew they were in the presence of living history, a man whose physique and spirit told the story of bodybuilding itself. Rounding out the top 10 were Tom Platz and Bob Birdsong, each receiving $1,000. For Platz, the check meant more than cash. It was a personal victory, proof that charisma and heart still had a place in modern bodybuilding. For Birdsong, it was recognition of consistency and discipline. The total purse of $100,000 made the 1984 Mr. Olympia the most lucrative and prestigious bodybuilding event the world had ever seen. As the lights dimmed and the curtains closed, one feeling filled the air: change. Olympia had reinvented itself. The crowd left Madison Square Garden knowing they had witnessed something far bigger than a muscle contest. They had seen the birth of a new king. Lee Haney hadn't just won. He had launched an era where power and aesthetics would finally walk hand in hand, and where the dream of becoming a champion would mean chasing perfection itself. Mr. Olympia in 1984 wasn't just another chapter. It was the defining line between the golden era of the 70s and the dawn of the Haney Era, when size and beauty finally found harmony. Until then, the sport had been dominated by the pursuit of sculpted, artistic physiques. But from that night on, the ideal evolved. Haney proved that it was possible to blend power, mass, and elegance into one inspiring human form. His physique wasn't just impressive, it was symbolic, representing the maturity of a sport that now demanded more than muscle. It demanded vision. Sergio Oliva's return served as the bridge between the sport's glorious past and its rising present. His presence on that stage wasn't mere nostalgia. It was a living tribute to Olympia's origins, to the era when bodybuilding was still fighting for recognition. In contrast, Haney's victory marked the full professionalization of the sport. He brought a new mentality, methodical training, scientific nutrition, and an unshakable work ethic that would inspire an entire generation. Bodybuilding historians agree that 1984 stands as one of the most important Olympias of all time, not only for its clash of generations, but for the cultural and technical impact it had on the IFBB's global image. From that year on, bodybuilding earned greater respect, visibility, and international prestige. Competitions became world-class spectacles, and athletes were finally seen as true professionals. Olympia stopped being just a muscle show and became an event with soul, legacy, and purpose. It was also the contest that redefined the very concept of physical perfection. Haney's smooth lines and detailed muscle structure set a new aesthetic standard that would influence champions for decades. His dominance on stage wasn't only physical, it was spiritual. He embodied discipline, faith, and humility, rare qualities in such a competitive arena. That combination made him not just a sports icon, but a model of leadership and character. Haney's victory marked the beginning of a reign that would last nearly a decade. Each of his next 7 titles would reinforce the belief that 1984 had been the turning point, the moment Olympia stopped looking back and began dreaming forward. His rise inspired young athletes around the world, proving that success wasn't just about genetics, but about purpose and determination. And so, the legacy of the 1984 Mr. Olympia lives on as one of bodybuilding's greatest milestones, the day when tradition met innovation and the stage itself became a symbol of transformation. That year, bodybuilding came of age. And with Lee Haney, the sport gained not only a new champion, it gained a new ideal, one that fused class, faith, and power into a single, unforgettable human form. And now that you know the epic story behind the 1984 Mr. Olympia, tell me in the comments, do you think Lee Haney truly changed the course of bodybuilding? Or do you believe the golden era of the 70s still holds something untouchable? Your opinion keeps this conversation alive, and every comment helps this video reach more passionate fans around the world. So don't forget to hit that like button. It really supports the channel and tells us you want to see more videos like this. If you're the kind of person who gets chills with every pose, who feels inspired by legends like Sergio Oliva, Arnold Schwarzenegger, or Lee Haney, consider becoming a channel member. That's the best way to directly support our work. Every bit of help makes a difference and allows us to keep telling the story of bodybuilding the way it deserves, with quality, passion, and respect for its heroes. And of course, if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next episodes of our Mr. Olympia timeline. We're recreating every single edition, from the very beginning to the present day, with the kind of details, curiosities, and insights you'll only find here. Don't go anywhere yet. On the final screen, you'll see another unmissable chapter in this saga, the 1966 Mr. Olympia, where Larry Scott took his final bow and paved the way for the legends who would follow. Click it and keep joining us on this journey through the history of world bodybuilding. See you in the next video, because every pose, every victory, and every name that ever stepped on that stage deserves to be remembered. Here, the history of bodybuilding stays alive, one championship at a time.